Hello and welcome to the Business Octopus live stream where we talk about all things sales, marketing and technology. I'm Avon Collis, CRM and Marketing Automation Specialist at Relevate. And today we're going to be talking about some common questions that we get around marketing, technology and sales. And also, if you're watching this and you've got any questions, don't forget you can jump into the comments feed. I can see, I can't reply to some, but hopefully, if you've got any questions, we'll get to them in real time at the end as well. You could be following this along on our YouTube, on our LinkedIn, or our Facebook page. In any case, I should be able to see your comments there. Now, we've got a community, an online community, where we share information about marketing technology, and we'll pop the link in the comments after this as well. But basically, it's a space where we can talk about careers, new technologies, new ideas, and just allow people to really get a good foothold into what is now becoming an absolutely critical part of everyday business, of everyday life. We've got so many calls now for automation, for digitization. We've got businesses that used to be able to run on a spreadsheet. Now we live in such a complex sort of world in terms of reporting requirements and data requirements that it gets a lot harder to be able to run any kind of business, really, I guess, from a paper carbon copy book or invoice book or something like that. So we've got a few discussion points that we're going to go over today. Some were questions that we had last week, and we do these every Friday. Generally about the 1:30 to 2 o'clock mark on Brisbane time. So the questions that we had last time we'll be picking up from, and don't forget to put your questions in the chat. So first thing was a question we had about dashboards. Now, everybody seems to want to have a dashboard of some kind, but sometimes they don't really understand what goes into getting a dashboard. So yes, you want to have a nice chart or graph that tells you certain things. And a lot of times you might buy a particular software package and it comes with a graph or a chart or something. But to understand what truly goes into building one will allow you to hopefully build one faster, reduce the issues and problems. You shouldn't have to go to a specialist. Ideally, with this information, it'll show you exactly what you need to create a proper dashboard. Now, what is a dashboard? Dashboard is usually a few graphical or visually represented charts, and you've got those gauge ones that says, are you up to a particular goal? You've got those ones that talk about what for example, like a donut chart, or like the X and Y axis with the line, sort of like more of a trend chart. But a lot of times that's kind of gives you the finger on the pulse of what's happening at scale, or in summary of a larger amount of information or data. So having a dashboard can be a visual representation of generally a report, which probably looks more like an Excel spreadsheet, and that needs to be similar or consistent. So you need to think about the data that you're using underneath all of that, that is going to drive or create that report. So for example, it needs to be repeatable, predictable, and categorizable, if that's a word. So for example, we once worked with a client who would use this free text field on their CRM to enter information to say that they're an accountant or a lawyer. And so they would sometimes put in the name of the accountant. They would sometimes put in a short version like ACC rather than the full word. But what this causes is a data issue. It stops you from creating a measurable or a computer measurable data point. So when you're creating a report, that data point needs to be explicit in order for a computer to be able to recognize or put it into a bucket. So we generally recommend having a pick list value, which is a predetermined output or outcome You can't, for example, change the spelling. So let's just say we were going to categorize by state. You can't have QLD for some, one with Q capitalized and the rest not, the full word, maybe the full word misspelt or all caps. Those cause data issues. So it's good to have some consistency in categorizing and grouping things. So you would use a pick list value. So first of all, if you're going to create a dashboard in your business, you need to know what is it that you're actually measuring. There's no point having a lovely looking visual representation of a piece of data if it doesn't make sense to know. Is it the number of customers per month? Is it the amount of revenue that you've got versus the number of customers, which could then give you more insights into profitability. So understanding what you want to know is really, really important. But you also need to understand what are the questions that you need to ask, what's the information that you need to collect in order to spit out that report line item or that dashboard. So in our profitability example, if we were saying that it is revenue versus number of customers, that's not exactly profitability, but that's more of a generic. So for example, profitability per customer would be how much did you invoice, and then what did it cost to deliver those services. Whereas revenue by total customers gives you a better view of the entire business. For example, you might have some customers that are wildly profitable, and then you might have a lot of other smaller customers that are not very or even unprofitable. So that revenue across number of customers or number of active customers is a really good way to measure exactly how profitable your business is overall, because you might be spending a lot of time on people who are not good for you, who are not profitable, who drag and drain a lot of time. So different metrics are, first of all, understanding what you want to measure, and then understanding what's the data you need to collect in order to create that report, in order to create that dashboard. So once you know what it is you need to collect, you need to have somewhere to store it or some way of collecting it. So obviously the profitability one is probably in your order management system or your accounting software. But other things might be, maybe you need to form a questionnaire, like an online form, or maybe it's not necessarily a question you directly ask, but it's data that you can get through what's called metadata or data about data. So metadata might be number of times someone logged into a platform. You have not asked a question, but you have some evidence that people have logged onto a platform because there might be a background event that happens on your software or on your system in some way. The next thing is you actually need to go and actively collect the data. So understand what you want to collect, create a home for it and a way to collect it. So a database and perhaps an online form. Then create a way and then go out and actually collect the data. Go and ask people that survey, send them the link, or log into that platform and download those log files. And then once you've collected the data, it's well structured, it's got some things that you can prioritize and group it by, then you need to build a report. And a report is quite literally, looks more like an Excel spreadsheet, and it could be person, date, login, number of logins. And then you could say, all right, how many people are logging in? And then how many times are people logging? How many times is that one person logging in? Or how many times is all of them logging in on average? Then that can give you a much better insight into what's going on rather than just total number of logins. So for example, you might have a lower volume of customers, but then a very high number of logins. So why are they jumping in and out? It could be that perhaps you need to increase the automatic timeout from 30 minutes to 1 hour or 2 hours or something like that. And then that would drive better customer service because, or a better perception or better happiness of using the platform. However, you might make the decision the other way and say that's a good thing, particularly if you're a bank. You need to have that automatic logout feature so that if someone logs into their banking, walks away from their PC, that someone else can't jump in and transfer $100,000 to themselves. So understand what the data is going to do. Dashboard for the sake of having a dashboard is not a good idea. Okay, next question we have was around the the best uses of automation. Now, quite often we have a lot of people who are trying to, and hello Drifter, if you're on, I can see your comment there. So if you've got automation, a lot of times people go, the easiest thing to automate in your business is running some emails. So email automation can be a good thing, but the problem about with email automation is quite often, particularly since COVID, everyone's getting 1,000 emails. Everyone's getting bombarded. And I think automation, yes, people think, all right, well, I'm going to do this at scale to 1,000 people, that's automation. That's really more probably batch processing rather than automation, which is good and bad. The good is that you can get a lot done in a very short period of time. The bad is that you're going to send a lot of emails out to someone who's perhaps not, not relevant, or perhaps it's not personalized enough. People are looking for mass customization at these days. So obviously putting their first name in, putting their some attributes about them, and having a message that's relevant to where they are, perhaps talking about the weather. You don't want to send and say, damn, it's hot, and they happen to be in a winter kind of area. So having the right content go, and if we're talking about automation, not bulk emails, I would say the best way to use automation is through intelligent micro automations. For example, you go about your everyday, you're doing all this work in your business, in your systems, and it might just be, and if this, then that. But it's a process that you do 100 times, and it might just be for 1 or 2 people. But that automation step would save a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And those micro automations are much more effective internally, because then your people become more efficient, particularly if it's a repeatable task. It's also more welcome because it's only going to happen to 2 or 3 people, or 50 or 20 internally, that they're not going to get blasted with this email that's not irrelevant. They're going to get moved to the next stage in the process, or they're going to get a push notification that's relevant to them, or something like that. So you're not doing automation to thousands, you're doing automation to 5s, 10s, 100s. And then that way it's much more micro, it's much more personalized and relevant and timely. And that's the best use for automation in my view. Okay, so we had a few questions from the audience last week, which I'd like to quickly get into. So the first one was, because last week we went through and we did we recorded a video ad. So we went and did our a video ad for our YouTube channel on the web hosting business, which was ripperhosting.com.au. And when we went and filmed that, we used a videographer, Orson, and it was quite a good process. It was obviously, when you get a professional in, you go through, take a whole day. You go and get, we had makeup artists, we had green screens, we had there's going to be 3D graphics and rendering and all that sort of stuff. So it was quite an ordeal and quite an event, and something that is big and is going to provide a lot of value, but takes a lot of time to do. So the question was, where has video had the biggest impact for you, me? And is it saving time, reaching new clients? And how do you know when to produce a video in-house or hire a professional? So based on our experience, and in terms of, video is a great way to communicate. Instead of doing the one-to-one all the time, you have the ability to do one-to-many. So instead of having, one-to-one conversations that take an hour, half an hour, and you can only have about 5 or 6 of those a day before you're completely booked out. Now I can have 1,000 people watch a video, and there's been no additional effort other than that first creation of the video. So one, you need to be very careful about the message, that it is actually warranted, that it is wanted, that it's going to hit home and serve the market that you are trying to address, that it's not going to be a time-bound thing that'll run out. For example, if, like we're very careful about doing demonstrations on software products, because quite often the software products user interface will change, or they'll move a button, or they'll change the way something is done on a very, very regular basis. So creating a video that talks about that is problematic, because then the video runs out of its freshness or its relevance. And so you've then got to keep creating that same content. So doing something like this, where there's not necessarily a time and a date, a lot of the context and information that we're talking about is quite timeless. The next thing is, if I'm going to create a video, I need to think about how valuable is that video going to be. You know, sometimes good enough is good enough. Having one that's quickly done on the phone is a little bit raw and real, and can sometimes really show someone what you know, or what the thought of the day, or it's just present. And you know, there's, you know, like even on different social media platforms, you've got a different approach. So you take photos of your food on you know, Instagram, but you know, maybe on Facebook once upon a time, you know, you do the raw and real. This is us. Here's the beer and wine. Instagram seems to be a bit more staged and beautiful. There's filters applied. You know, someone's had the makeup done. So it's a different approach, and it's a different framing and context. So there are times when, you know, the raw, ready, mobile, self-shot video is great, but there are times when you want to portray a different image, particularly if you're running a large, or you want to run a large business. You need to level up and act up where you want to be. So, you know, doing the suit, and, you know, maybe having proper lighting. You know, we've upgraded our cameras and our lighting and our microphones to get a better outcome. And I think the tipping point is a little bit different for everybody. But how valuable is this video going to be? Is it going to reach the masses? Is it a quick social post, or is it something that needs to last a long time? Or even if it's a quick social post, does it need to be really high impact? Does it need to really grab attention? That should be the deciding factor on how much time, effort, money, etc., that you put into it. And of course, if you're busy and you're growing, you don't have time to do all the planning, all the editing, and all the shooting. So you literally need to hire a professional just to set it all up for you. You walk in, you deliver the goods, you walk out, the rest is done. So that would be my decision point. Okay, the next question we had was from Danny, and it was, where to use technology to calculate the return on investment from marketing spend, whether it's on social media engagement, pay-per-click advertising, direct conversations, or face-to-face sales. So that's quite a large, complex question. So let's deconstruct that. So basically, the return on investment, obviously, if someone is going to spend money on advertising, they want to make sure that they're going to get value back. So in the first instance, I would say not all marketing dollars lead to sales, but that's not a bad thing. So if you think about, you know, there's different types of marketing. Some are for brand awareness, just to let people know that you are around, that you exist, and to apply a look and feel, you know, like a logo, or you know, like an ethos or a culture out in the world to say, this is us. If you align to us, and if you ever happen to need this sort of stuff, think about us. So it's not really sort of saying, come and buy something from me right now. Then there's other bits that other marketing that is more targeted at trying to drive sales. It's that, you know, buy now and get a free set of steak knives. They're trying to get a result, an action. That's a very different sort of spend. You really need to have that awareness first, and then you need to close the deal. Then there's other things like, you know, reminding people, you know, that retention sort of side of things. So it depends on what your marketing is trying to do. However, your digital marketing definitely has a measurable ROI, because, and in particular, if you have an online store or some electronic means of calculating the sale, because you've got tracking codes that can go, where did they click to after the event? Did they make it all the way through to the sales page? And then based on whether or not they get to the thank you page, the tracking code will pick up, did they stop at the sales page, or did they get to the checkout thank you? If they got to the checkout thank you, then clearly they made a purchase, they bought something. So you could then go and map that against transaction history, and that sort of thing. It's a different conversation when the sales actually occur offline. The offline sales are just that little bit harder to track. However, if you've got a CRM, we quite often use things like Zoho or Salesforce, and there are a number of others. But usually in those platforms, there's an object called campaigns. Now, that can be a little confusing if you're using Zoho because they're mailing platforms called campaigns. But on the CRM side, the object campaigns is designed to track and measure those marketing programs. So it's not necessarily, going to track all of the, how many times people visited the website, how many times people, read your ad on without visiting, without clicking. What it's going to do is give you the end result. So say, for example, you set up a campaign, you say, right, we're going to do, this is the summer campaign, and we're going to put in magazine, radio, TV, all that sort of stuff. And when people come into the business and they fill out that lead form and you have the conversation with them, and this is largely for B2B sales, you have that conversation, you say, how much, or how did you find out about us? I watched a TV ad. But it could be multi-attribution. So for example, someone might have watched TV, seen the ad, heard it on the radio, walked past a billboard, but then when they saw the ad on social media, that's when they clicked. So you don't want to create an attribution area because that was the conversion event. That wasn't necessarily where the idea and the convincing came from. The convincing came long in advance of that. And by the time they saw the ad, that was the time to just click because it was easy. So a lot of times people will pour money into digital, but not actually get the full value that they should. So the way to track it is in that campaigns, because you'll say, this is a marketing campaign for, the winter campaign. And when people come in and they buy, they'll track, or you can put in how they found you and the fact that they were related to that specific campaign. And then when they create an opportunity and go through to closed one, you could run a report that says, how many closed one opportunities came from these campaigns? How much did you spend on those campaigns? But, at the end of the day, whilst you can run those reports and whilst you can get that information, it's never going to be the 100% story. It's really just a little bit of a finger on the pulse, a little bit of an indication of what's really going on in the minds of the public. It's never going to be the 100% answer solution. It's really just a clue. So hopefully that's been enough, and we've answered that question. Like I said, it's a little bit in depth and there's multi parts to it. So we're getting close to the end of our live stream today. If you've been listening and if you've liked what you've heard, first of all, thank you. Stay tuned, because every week, every Friday, we'll jump on and do a live stream and answer some questions that we commonly get and that we deal with when working with clients, and also from the social. So if you've got a question, please comment on any of the posts, send in an email, or jump on the website, and for that you go to relevate.com.au and fill out one of the contact forms. But otherwise, thank you for listening to this session. You can find us on all of the socials. Don't forget to check out and subscribe on YouTube, where we've got lots of tutorials, podcasts, and things like that. So also, we've got to give a shout out to our web hosting brand. That's the one we did the video for, and that was quite a lot of fun. So otherwise, thank you very much for listening. It's been real, it's been fun, and otherwise, please comment, take care, have a great one. Oh, sorry, before I go, one last thing I have to do is we want to express our sympathy and concern for the nation state of Ukraine. So Russia, if you haven't heard, has rolled over the border, and they are now at war. So our thoughts go out to them, and I hope that things settle down or start improve in that area. Anyway, that's one final note, sorry. But other than that, please take care, stay safe, and have a good one.